This is The Lives of a Cell by Lewis Thomas, a collection of essays originally published in the New England Journal of Medicine between the years 1971 and 1973. And the essay in particular that I'm going to read to you is called The Icks. The source material that the author uses is a book called The Mountain People by C.M. Turnbull, published in New York by Simon & Schuster, 1972. Before I read, I'd just like you to ask yourself what you know about hunter-gatherers and Aboriginal cultures. Another work I would like to recommend is The Human Legacy by Lewis Thomas, a book which covers a great deal of prehistory on mankind's transformation from nomadic and migratory Aboriginal hunter-gatherers into sedentary and semi-sedentary agrarian and agricultural peoples. I have a few more authors I'd like to recommend and their works, but before I do, I will read to you the Icks. The Icks. The small tribe of Icks, formerly nomadic hunters and gatherers in the mountain valleys of northern Uganda, have become celebrities, literary symbols for the ultimate fate of disheartened, heartless mankind at large. Two disastrously conclusive things happened to them. The government decided to have a national park, so they were compelled by law to give up hunting in the valleys and become farmers on poor hillside soil. And then they were visited for 2 years by an anthropologist who detested them and wrote a book about them. The message of the book is that the Icks have transformed themselves into an irreversibly disagreeable collection of unattached, brutish creatures, totally selfish and loveless in response to the dismantling of their traditional culture. Moreover, this is what the rest of us are like in our inner selves, and we will all turn into Icks when the structure of our society comes all unhinged. The argument rests, of course, on certain assumptions about the core of human beings, and is necessarily speculative. You have to agree in advance that man is fundamentally a bad lot, out for himself alone, displaying such graces as affection and compassion only as learned habits. If you take this view, the story of the Icks can be used to confirm it. These people seem to be living together, clustered in small, dense villages, but they are really solitary, unrelated individuals with no evident use for each other. They talk, but only to make ill-tempered demands and cold refusals. They share nothing. They never sing. They turn the children out to forage as soon as they can walk, and desert the elders to starve whenever they can, and the foraging children snatch food from the mouths of the helpless elders. It is a mean society. They breed without love or even casual regard. They defecate on each other's doorsteps. They watch their neighbors for signs of misfortune, and only then do they laugh. In the book, they do a lot of laughing, having so much bad luck. Several times, they even laughed at the anthropologist, who found this especially repellent. One senses between the lines that the scholar is not himself the world's luckiest man. Worse, they took him into the family, snatched his food, defecated on his doorstep, and hooted dislike at him. They gave him 2 bad years. It is a depressing book. If, as he suggests, there is only ickness at the center of each of us, our sole hope for hanging on to the name of humanity will be in endlessly mending the structure of our society, and it is changing so quickly and completely that we may never find the threads in time. Meanwhile, left to ourselves, alone, solitary, we will become the same joyless, zestless, untouching lone animals. But this may be too narrow a view. For one thing, the Icks are extraordinary. They are absolutely astonishing, in fact. The anthropologist has never seen people like them anywhere, nor have I. You'd think, if they were simply examples of the common essence of mankind, they'd seem more recognizable. Instead, they are bizarre, anomalous. I have known my share of peculiar, difficult, nervous, grabby people, but I've never encountered any genuinely, consistently detestable human beings in all my life. The Icks sound more like abnormalities. Maladies. I cannot accept it. I do not believe that the Icks are representative of isolated, revealed man, unobscured by social habits. I believe their behavior is something extra, something laid on. This unremitting, compulsive repellence is a kind of complicated ritual. They must have learned to act this way. They copied it somehow. I have a theory then. The Icks have gone crazy. The solitary ik, isolated in the ruins of an unexploded culture, has built a new defense for himself. If you live in an unworkable society, you can make up one of your own, and this is what the iks have done. Each ik has become a group, a one-man tribe on its own, a constituency. Now everything falls into place. This is why they do seem, after all, vaguely familiar to all of us. We've seen them before. This is precisely the way groups of one size or another, ranging from committees to nations, behave. It is, of course, this aspect of humanity that has lagged behind the rest of evolution, and this is why the ik seems so primitive in his absolute selfishness, his incapacity to give anything away, no matter what. He is a successful committee. When he stands at the door of his hut shouting insults at his neighbors in a loud harangue, he is city addressing another city. Cities have all the ik characteristics. They defecate on doorsteps, in rivers and lakes, their own or anyone else's. They leave rubbish. They detest all neighboring cities, giving nothing away. They even build institutions for deserting elders out of sight. Nations are the most ik-like of all. And in the 21st century, I'll insert corporations, even more so. No wonder the iks seem familiar. For total greed, rapacity, heartlessness, and irresponsibility, there is nothing to match a nation, or a corporation, even more so. Nations, by law, are solitary, self-centered, withdrawn into themselves. There is no such thing as affection between nations, and certainly no nation ever loved another. They bawl insults from their doorsteps, defecate into whole oceans, snatch all the food, survive by detestation, take joy in the bad luck of others, celebrate the death of others, live for the death of others. That's it, and I shall stop worrying about the book. It does not signify that man is a sparse, inhuman thing at his center. He's all right. It only says what we've always known and never had enough time to worry about. That we haven't yet learned how to stay human when assembled in masses. The ik, in his despair, is acting out this failure, and perhaps we should pay closer attention. Nations have themselves become too frightening to think about, but we might learn something by watching these people. And that was The Iks by Lewis Thomas. The other two works that I wanted to recommend, besides The Human Legacy by Leon Festinger, are Saharasia by James DeMeo and Mankind in Amnesia by Immanuel Velikovsky. Velikovsky's work is a very broad scope, and Mankind in Amnesia in particular focuses on our transformation after a great trauma. Saharasia documents the expansion of the desert belts from northern Africa across Asia through the end of the Gobi. And I'm going to let you look at those books for yourself if you can get copies. But basically, what happened to the Iks is what happened to humanity, to mankind. And according to Saharasia, there was no war, no emotional pestilence before that great catastrophe. So Velikovsky's work proposes one particular one way that we might view our history and such a catastrophe that could have caused the Saharasian desert belts to spring up, or quite the reverse, to dry up. So I'll leave it there, and I hope you enjoyed the reading.